seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave.
These buildings haunt the Islamic world. They once hummed with the activity of students. Such a building was a madrasa, the forerunner of our present universities. In such beautiful buildings as the madrasa at Kargid in eastern Iran, the sciences of Islamic civilization were refined.
God did not distribute to his servants anything more to be esteemed than intelligence.
At Damascus in Syria is one of the earliest as well as one of the greatest mosques of Islam, the Umayyad Mosque. It is not a madrasa, but like all important mosques, it is a teaching center. For Islam, intelligence is the chief mark of man, and by its correct use he will bind himself to God. The central means is a book, the Quran. And a great deal of the activity in such a building is activity of the mind. Each teacher has an area in the mosque where his circle gathers. Whoever wishes may come to listen, not only regular students, but also artisans, merchants, and villagers from the nearby bazaars. Out of this informal and free teaching in the mosques came the madrasa system. The river Tigris at Baghdad. It is said that it ran black with the ink of the books thrown into it when the city was sacked by the Mongols in 1258. For it was at Baghdad that thousands of Greek scientific and philosophical texts were translated into Arabic. Of the many great schools which Baghdad possessed at the time of the sack, one has survived, the famous madrasa known as the Mustansiriya. In such a madrasa, students, often from distant parts of the Muslim world, lived and worked. The atmosphere was relaxed. Groups of students gathered about each master, while related activities went on nearby. Sometimes women, too, were students at madrasas. A student paid nothing to live and study here. Most of the teaching was oral, with a bond of personal devotion between student and teacher. Like many others, this beautiful madrasa at Marrakesh in Morocco stands empty. Built in 1565, it was in continuous use until 1960, when the students were moved to new buildings. Upstairs, all around the courtyard, the students' rooms open off the long, cool corridors. Usually there would be 2 or 3 students to a room. A built-in ladder leads to a sleeping space above. This madrasa in Isfahan was built early in the 18th century. It is the last of the great Safavid buildings and one of the most beautiful. Madrasas are not segregated from the life of the city. They are built in the very heart of it, a place of tranquility in the midst of the activities which disperse the soul of man. Anyone can come here to pray, to hear some of the teaching, or to sit in recollection. From the madrasa system, there developed what are probably the oldest universities in the world. Al-Azhar in Cairo is over 1,000 years old. It is one of the greatest centers of learning and devotion in the Islamic world. Its graduates are the teachers, scientists, and businessmen of the Islamic world, as well as its religious leaders. In the theological faculty, the traditional teaching method is still in use. The early universities of Europe may have based their system upon Islamic institutions such as Al-Azhar, which are about 2 centuries older. The present-day term chair of a faculty reflects the procedure which is still in use at Al-Azhar. Each professor sits on a chair, with his students ringed about him on the floor. For Islam, the individual objects in the world cannot be truly understood in isolation, but only within their context in the universe. Each is an appearance, a sign, part of a system greater than itself. This is the key to the Islamic approach to the knowledge of the world.
Know the world is a mirror from head to foot. In every atom are 100 blazing suns. If you cleave the heart of one drop of water, 100 pure oceans emerge from it. If you examine closely each grain of sand, 1,000 atoms may be seen in it. In its members, a gnat is like an elephant. In its qualities, a drop of rain is like the Nile. The heart of a barleycorn equals 100 harvests. A world dwells in the heart of a millet seed.
To consider something for itself alone, as if it were isolated from everything else, is a fundamental error and can only lead to false knowledge. And so, in Islamic civilization, each object and science has its place in a hierarchy which preserves the true proportions of things.
The sciences have come to be regarded as so many branches of a single tree, which grows and sends forth leaves and fruit in conformity with the nature of the tree itself. Just as a branch of a tree does not continue to grow indefinitely, so any discipline is not to be pursued beyond a certain limit, for that would end by destroying the harmony of the tree as a whole.
Within this overall concept, many sciences were developed to a high degree, but it is mathematics which held pride of place. Just as the abstract nature of Islamic art reflects the principles which underlie existence, rather than the appearance of things, so mathematics expresses perfectly the way in which unity underlies the apparent diversity of the world. For example, the definition of a point is that it has no dimensions, but it is a moving point which generates a line. And a moving line generates a flat plane. And a moving plane generates a three-dimensional solid, the 3 dimensions in which we live. The whole is built up from the initial dimensionless point, the unity beneath all multiplicity. Astronomy was another science of great importance to the world of Islam. Here in Isfahan is a unique survival, one of the last astrolabe makers' workshops in the world. For centuries, this instrument played a key role in astronomy and navigation in the Islamic world and in Europe. No sailor would set out on more than the shortest voyage without one. In order to pray, a Muslim must know the precise direction of Mecca, and many events in his life are directly linked to movements of the heavenly bodies. The observatory originated in Islam. The observatory at Delhi is one of the 5 built by the Indian prince Jai Singh in the 18th century. Although Jai Singh was a Hindu, his observatories were modeled on the Islamic pattern. They are the best examples we have of what the great Islamic observatories of the past were like. Such large-scale instruments accurately measured the movements of heavenly bodies on the basis of the shadow cast by a fixed object, such as a pillar, or by direct sightings. A frequent method was to use threads carefully suspended across an instrument such as this exact model of the heavenly sphere, so that their shadows gave direct readings. This instrument is a right-angled triangle, with its hypotenuse aligned on the pole. On either side are arcs of circles described in the plane of the equator, and measurements are made from the shadow cast onto them by the hypotenuse. In the 11th century, one of the greatest of all scientists, Al-Biruni, accurately measured the radius of the Earth. In northern Pakistan, a perfectly flat plain stretches out for hundreds of miles below the mountains. It was an ideal site, and the measurement Al-Biruni made was less than 0.2% different from that of the present day.
When in the country of India, I found a mountain adjacent to a flat plain. I first found its height above sea level. I then imagined the sight line passing on its peak and connecting with the horizon. I found through my instrument that the dip of the horizon was 34 minutes.
Once he had this angle, by using his knowledge of trigonometry and then subtracting the height of the mountain, Al-Biruni was able to calculate the radius of the Earth and its circumference. Muslim maps were the most accurate of their time. When viewed from the accustomed Western angle, this 12th century map showing Europe and the Middle East clearly indicates the source of the Nile in the Great Lakes of East Africa. For medieval Europe, Muslims such as Avicenna, Averroes and Razi were the principal sources of medical knowledge. Muslims call their tradition of medicine Yunani, Ionian, and it is the direct continuation of the Greek tradition. Unity is the key idea. A doctor is not just a medical specialist. He is a hakim, a wise man. a scholar and perhaps a spiritual guide as well as a physician. He must always be aware of his patient as a whole, soul as well as body, and not try to treat the disease in isolation.
इजाबत का क्या हाल रहता है?
कब्ज रहता है कि इंसान बहुत सख्त।
जुबान दिखाइएगा जरा, ऐनक हटाएं।
इसमें आँखों के अंदर भी बड़ा भारीपन और बहुत ये कुछ मालूम होता है कि यह खराब।
An illness is thought of not as the entry into the system of a foreign element, such as a germ, which must be killed, but as a loss of natural harmony. The aim of the Hakim is to restore this harmony, and to do so it is to the natural world that he turns, and particularly to the world of plants and herbs. In every traditional Islamic city, an area of the bazaar will be found in which the herbalists have their shops. They are the pharmacists of the Islamic world. The stock of such a shop will include herbs, seeds and roots, dried animal parts, perfumes such as myrrh and frankincense, gums, ointments, and scented woods. Often the plants used are gathered wild by expert herbalists. This 14th century manuscript is of the key work in medieval medicine, the Canon, which Avicenna wrote in the 11th century. Great advances were made by Islamic medicine. It was Ibn Nafis who in the 13th century accurately described the lesser or pulmonary circulation of the blood, which until recently was regarded as a 16th century European discovery. Optics and eye disease were other areas in which basic work was done. Words such as cornea, cataract, and retina are of Arabic origin. It was in the Islamic world that hospitals first developed as important institutions. This hospital was built in Damascus in 1155. The beauty of the detail reflects the importance of medicine. It was also a way of reassuring the patient. Much attention was paid to psychological factors, and Avicenna used to make a special point of embracing his patients. Another early hospital in Damascus, built in the 13th century.
Take care of the poor, the widows, and the orphans. Pay them special pensions from your treasury. Build hospitals for sick Muslims, with a staff of physicians and attendants who will cure them and minister to their needs.
A caesarean operation, painted in 1307. This is a post-mortem operation, but effective anesthetics based on the knowledge of herbs were certainly in use. Edirne in Turkey was the capital of the Ottoman Empire before the capture of Istanbul. Here in the 15th century, a comprehensive medical center was built, which was far in advance of anything in Europe. The complex is built around the mosque, for no branch of knowledge was unrelated to the religion. In its courtyard, theology was taught, and beyond lie the other buildings in a lucid and well-integrated design. The mosque is flanked by two groups of buildings. On one side, the kitchens in which free meals were given by the Waqf, as in many Turkish cities. The bakery, warehouse and workshops. On the other side, a hospital, a pharmacy and administrative offices, an asylum for the mentally sick, and a large medical school for resident students. The hospital lies beneath a large central dome. The building is octagonal. 5 niches opening off the central area are used for consultation. Between the niches are 6 closed hospital wards, where serious cases or those which might be infectious could be treated. It was from Turkey that in the 18th century, vaccination against smallpox was introduced to Europe. In Pakistan, a considerable revival of interest in traditional Islamic medicine is taking place. These men are gathering a herb which is valuable for treating jaundice. They work for the Hamdard Institute of Pakistan, which, like its twin institute in India, is revitalizing the classical medicine of Islam by applying modern methods and procedures. The traditional herbs are brought to the institute from many sources. These are the cocoons of silkworms. Silk, like paper, is one of the many things that was brought from China to the West by Muslims. The cocoons are regarded as a valuable treatment for heart trouble. Here, rubies are being ground. Emeralds, coral, agate, cornelian, pearls, gold, and silver are all substances used in Islamic remedies. The Hakims of the Hamdard Institute hold free clinics at which the traditional medicine is practiced.
The physician should be of tender disposition and wise nature, excelling in acumen. And no physician can be of tender disposition if he fails to recognize the nobility of the human soul, nor of wise nature unless he is acquainted with logic. And he who is not acute in conjecture will not arrive at a correct understanding of any ailment, for he must derive his indications from the pulse, which has a systole, a diastole, and a pause intervening between these two movements.
About the year 1000, Avicenna described the information that can be obtained from the pulse.
In our opinion, the features of the pulse are 10. They are: 1, quality of diastole, to be estimated in terms of length, breadth, and thickness. 2, quality of the impact transmitted to the observer's finger. 3, duration of each movement. 4, consistency of the artery. 5, emptiness or fullness of the vessel between beats. 6, feel, hot or cold. 7, duration of the pauses. 8, equality of force in successive beats. 9, regularity or its opposite. 10, what may be termed the musical character: meter, rhythm, harmony, measure, accent. The musical character of the pulse must always be considered.
Islamic civilization brought medicine and many other fields of knowledge to an advanced development, but it never lost its sense of proportion, never lost sight of the nature of man and the ultimate objectives of his existence. Writing in the 13th century, the great author and mystic Jalaluddin Rumi compared the world to a vast sea in which we have somehow to find the pearl of meaning.
One person comes to the sea and sees nothing but salt water, whales, and fish. He asks, "Where is the jewel?" Perhaps there is none. But when can the pearl be found just by looking at the sea? If that person takes out 100,000 pails of water from the sea, he will not find the pearl. One needs a deep-sea diver to discover the pearl, and then not just any diver at all, but one who is clever and fortunate. These arts and sciences are like taking out the water of the sea in pails. The way of finding the pearl is something else.